made a post on social media. It was a video. He announced that a short time ago, the U.S. began major combat operations in Iran. As you heard Ian mention there, the president said the objective is to defend American people, to eliminate imminent threats from the Iranian regime, calling the regime a, quote, vicious group of people, going on to say that its menacing activities directly endanger the United States, our troops, our bases overseas, and our allies throughout the world. Now, this comes as the region has been on edge for weeks. The president, we have heard him over the last few weeks repeatedly threaten military strikes against Iran if its leaders did not agree to its demands, including reining in its nuclear program. At the same time, we have seen the U.S. build up this massive force in the region as we were waiting for potential action from the president. Now, we also know that these diplomatic talks have been ongoing, but as of last night, the president expressed his dissatisfaction with the state of negotiations, saying that they need to make a deal and they don't want to go far enough. But the president, throughout the last few weeks, has been stressing that he wants to see diplomacy here. Just yesterday, he said they hadn't made a final decision, but he wasn't happy with the state of negotiations. But again, this also comes as, we have been waiting for the president to explain clearly to the American people about what his ultimate objective is. Is this about the nuclear deal? Is this about the ballistic missile program? Is this about regime change?
Selena Wang joining us from D.C. Thank you very much. And we want to go to Martha Raddatz, and who can explain. She has covered the region for years in that region. Martha, tell us the latest of what you're learning.
Well, what we know now, this joint strike between the Israelis and the U.S. is that U.S. strikes involve a mix of U.S. aircraft and Tomahawk cruise missiles fired by U.S. Navy ships in the region. So this is a large-scale attack. It does not appear to be this limited strike, one of those options that President Trump was given, and that option involved making a preemptive strike to bring the Iranians to the table and be on the side of what the U.S. wanted. But clearly those negotiations have really already broken down. I'm certain that the Iranians expected this. They knew those negotiations had essentially broken down. They knew from President Trump's public statements that he was not happy with where the negotiations were going. So this does, as Ian said, appear to be a larger scale strike that will probably last several days, if not weeks. There is one statement that the president made on that Truth Social video, and it was an angry posting, said, "We aren't going to take this anymore." The president said, and it's an extraordinary statement, "The lives of courageous American heroes may be lost, and we may have casualties. That often happens in war, but we're doing this not for now, but we're doing this for the future, and it is a noble mission." This is the first time we have heard the president say anything about this to the American people, to give this kind of warning to the American people. He has simply said that the U.S. will not allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon, but he has not prepared the U.S. public or Congress for what may happen here. Again, the statement, "The lives of courageous American heroes may be lost, and we may have casualties. That often happens in war," said the president, "but we're doing this not for now, but we're doing this for the future, and it is a noble mission." Again, a reminder that just this week in the State of the Union, the president had said that the nuclear program was obliterated in the U.S. strikes last June. That is clearly not what the U.S. believes anymore. They believe that the Iranians are capable of building a nuclear weapon, and they are trying to stop that from happening. A reminder also that this was a president who came into office as America first. He did not want to involve the U.S. in wars, but so far these are the third strikes that the president has made since just being in office.
And Martha, Iran has definitely also talked about how it would respond if there were any strikes that were made again. We want to go to ABC News analyst and retired Colonel Steve Ganyard. Steve, with Israel making that first strike and along with the U.S. now entering what it calls that U.S. joint strike, and with the president's sobering message about U.S. troops, What does that signal to you in terms of the military buildup there, of how long this could last?
Yeah, Michelle, if you remember in Midnight Hammer, the previous attack on Iran, it was actually fairly low risk. We put lots of airplanes over Iran to make sure that the B-2 successfully get to their targets, hitting the nuclear sites. Now, this seems to be much more widespread. We're getting preliminary reports of what appears to be decapitation strikes within Tehran, going after the leadership in Tehran, going after not only the theocracy, but the military leadership in Tehran. But there's also many strikes around the country that look like they're targeting missile sites. This has been the real worry about the ability of Iran to go back and retaliate against Israel and all of the U.S. allies within the Gulf. So the other concern besides nuclear sites and the leadership sites have been the ability for the Iranians to strike our allies and Israel with missile retaliation strikes.
And Steve, as Americans are joining us tonight across the country watching this unfold, we're seeing video from Tehran where Israel and the U.S. have entered into joint strikes targeting sections of Tehran. We don't know exactly what their targets are at this time, but what should Americans take away from this? We have a huge military presence across the region there, some 35,000 spread out. What does this mean for American families here watching? Everyone has a loved one who's in the military or knows somebody who is.
Yeah, the U.S. military has gone to great lengths in the past few days to make sure that any U.S. troops within the region that were vulnerable have been moved out of the region. So most of the aircraft we have there are to defend our allies in Qatar and the UAE and Saudi Arabia. We've flown in lots of anti-aircraft capability to bring down missiles and aircraft that might come in a retaliatory strike. So the U.S. has done a lot to lower their footprint within the region to take away any potential retaliatory targets that the Iranians may look to take down in the hours and days to come. I think the real point here in what the president was saying is that this is going to be a long-term effort, and this isn't just a pinprick. They're going after missile sites, they're going after nuclear sites. The president did mention naval sites, so down in the Strait of Hormuz, way down in the southern part of Iran, you have a very narrow channel where about 20% of the world's petroleum goes through every day. And so the Iranian Navy has had the ability to close that, which would have repercussions for markets and economies around the world if you took that much oil off the market. So the U.S. is hitting things that Iran could do to affect the rest of the world, which include nuclear sites, missile sites, the Navy that may be able to close the very strategic waterways that could affect the rest of the global economy. So a very interesting target set, much more in detail and much more widespread than we'd seen in previous strikes.
And Steve, I want to ask you, this is probably the biggest buildup in several decades. How does this compare to the Gulf War buildup?
Yeah, it's smaller just because the U.S. military is smaller since the Gulf War, but almost, Michelle, half of the deployable air assets that the United States has have been moved into the region. So a lot of air power in the region. The interesting part about this strike is that most of that air power has not been allowed to launch from bases in the region. So in UAE and Qatar and Saudi Arabia, they've said that you can't launch your aircraft from our bases to go after Iran. So much of what's happening now is coming off the USS. The two aircraft carriers in the region, one's in the Persian Gulf, or south of the Persian Gulf in the Indian Ocean. One is in the Mediterranean. So naval power, lots of cruise missiles. They are launched either from submarines or from destroyers. And so this is, at this point, a lot of standoff missiles. We're seeing some very interesting video of cruise missiles coming across Iraq. So these very low-level flying aircraft or missiles coming across and hitting various targets within Tehran. That's another part of this. This is quite interesting. It's the first time in memory that the U.S. has conducted a daylight raid in the region. Usually the cover of darkness is used to make sure that the Israelis or wherever it may be, or the Iranians, wherever it may be, cannot see those missiles as they're incoming. So very unusual in many ways. It's also unusual. It's the first time that the U.S. has jointly and publicly said we're conducting strikes with the Israelis. In the past, it's always been a coordination, but a quiet coordination. But this is very public. This is a joint U.S.-Israeli effort, and it is targeted at the regime. The president has said, we want to change the regime. Another thought here is, does this mean that people are going to rise up in the streets, or is it just the U.S. and the Israelis are going to take down leadership and hope that the Iranian people overthrow what's left of the regime?